Prime Field.
Welcome back to Prime Field, where we dive deep into the stories that shape college basketball. I'm your host, and today we're tackling one of the most compelling questions in women's college basketball right now. Picture this. The number one overall pick in the 2025 WNBA draft has just walked off the court at Gamble Pavilion for the final time. As a UConn Husky, the crowd is on their feet, but there's something bittersweet in the air. Paige Bueckers, the player who redefined what it means to be a point guard at the University of Connecticut, has left behind shoes that seem almost impossible to fill. But here's the thing about UConn women's basketball. They don't just replace legends, they create new ones. And right now, behind the scenes in Storrs, Connecticut, there's a battle brewing that could determine the entire trajectory of the Huskies' next chapter. We're talking about the point guard position, the quarterback of basketball, the conductor of the orchestra, the player who makes everyone else better. When you lose someone who they average 4.5 assists per game, while also being your primary scoring threat, you don't just plug in a replacement and hope for the best. You reimagine your entire offensive identity. So the question becomes, who has what it takes to step into that spotlight? Who can handle the pressure of running Gino Auriemma's system? And perhaps most importantly, who can help UConn maintain its position as one of the premier programs in women's college basketball? The answers to these questions are more fascinating than you might expect. They involve a cast of characters that includes a highly touted recruit from Maryland, a player whose role has been debated all season long, a potential transfer that could change everything, and even a forward who might just surprise us all with her versatility. Let's dive into this compelling story and examine each contender who could be the next to wear the point guard crown at UConn. When Coach Gino Auriemma talks about a player with genuine excitement in his voice, you know something special is brewing. And that's exactly what's happening when his conversations turn to Kelis Fisher. This isn't just another recruit joining the program. Fisher arrives in Storrs with credentials that read like a basketball scout's dream. We're talking about a player who dominated the high school scene in Maryland, a state renowned for producing elite basketball talent. But what makes Fisher truly intriguing isn't just her high school accolades. It's her experience on the international stage with USA Basketball's junior national team. Think about what that means for a moment. While most college freshmen are still adjusting to the speed and physicality of Division I basketball, Fisher has already competed against the best young players in the world. She's faced the pressure of representing her country, the intensity of international competition, and the discipline required to excel at the highest levels. Coach Auriemma has been particularly vocal about Fisher's athleticism and defensive capabilities. And in the world of UConn basketball, defense isn't just important, it's foundational. The Huskies have built their legacy on players who can lock down opponents while creating offensive opportunities through relentless intensity. Fisher appears to embody that dual threat mentality perfectly. But here's what makes her situation even more compelling. She's not just being asked to fill a role, she's being positioned to potentially redefine it. While Paige Bueckers was primarily a scoring point guard who facilitated for others, Fisher's athletic profile suggests she could bring a different dimension to the position. Imagine a point guard who can pressure the ball defensively for 94 feet, then immediately push the pace offensively to create easy scoring opportunities in transition. The beauty of Fisher's potential lies in her versatility. She's not locked into being just a distributor or just a scorer. Her athletic foundation gives her the tools to adapt to whatever the team needs on any given night. Against a slower, more methodical opponent, she can control tempo and run the half-court offense. Against a team that wants to run and gun, she can push the pace and create her havoc with her defensive pressure. Of course, the transition from high school to UConn isn't automatic, even for the most talented players. The question becomes, can Fisher handle the mental aspects of running Auriemma's complex offensive system while maintaining the defensive intensity that made her so attractive as a recruit? But if early indications are any guide, she's exactly the type of player who thrives under pressure and rises to meet expectations. Now let's talk about one of the most intriguing storylines in this point guard competition, the case of Arnold. Here's a player who finds herself at a fascinating crossroads. And honestly, her story might be the most compelling of all the contenders. Arnold isn't an unknown quantity at UConn. She's been in the system. She's learned from Paige Bueckers firsthand. And she understands the nuances of what Coach Auriemma expects from his point guards. But here's the challenge that makes her situation so interesting. Can a player successfully transition from a complementary role to being the primary engine of the offense? This isn't just about basketball skills, though Arnold certainly has those. This is about mentality, leadership presence, and the ability to command respect from teammates who might have previously viewed her as a supporting player. It's about stepping into huddles during crucial moments and having your voice carry the same weight that Bueckers' voice once carried. The analysts and basketball experts, they're genuinely divided on this question, and for good reason. We've seen players make this transition successfully. Think about how many NBA players went from being role players to stars when given the opportunity. But we've also seen players struggle with the increased responsibility and the pressure that comes with being the focal point of an offense. What works in Arnold's favor is her familiarity with the system and her understanding of her teammates' tendencies. She doesn't need to learn a new offensive philosophy. She doesn't have to build chemistry from scratch. She's been running these plays in practice. She knows where her teammates like to receive the ball, and she understands the timing that makes UConn's offense so effective. But there's another layer to consider here. Arnold's potential success, or struggle, could fundamentally change how UConn approaches the point guard position moving forward. If she thrives in an expanded role, it validates the idea that you can develop point guards within the system, rather than always relying on high-profile recruits. But if she struggles, it might push the coaching staff toward a different approach entirely. The beauty of Arnold's situation is that she's not operating in a vacuum. She has the benefit of playing alongside other talented guards, which means she doesn't have to be perfect from day one. She can grow into the role while having support around her. But ultimately, her success or failure in this transition could determine not just her own career trajectory, but the entire direction of UConn's backcourt for years to come. The pressure is real, but so is the opportunity. And sometimes, the most unlikely heroes emerge from exactly these types of situations. Here's where this story takes a dramatic turn. Because sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places, and in what might be the most significant development in this entire point guard battle. We've just received confirmation that could change everything. Kayleigh Heckel has officially committed to UConn. Let that sink in for a moment. We're no longer talking about a potential transfer target or a what-if scenario. We're talking about a proven Division I player who has made the decision to bring her talents to Storrs, Connecticut. This isn't just another piece of the puzzle. This could be the piece that makes the entire picture come into focus. Heckel represents what we might call the proven commodity option, a player who has already demonstrated the ability to compete at the highest level of college basketball. She's been battle-tested against elite competition. She understands the intensity and pace of Division I basketball, and she's ready to contribute from day one. There's no adjustment period, no learning curve about what it takes to succeed at this level. But here's what makes Heckel's commitment so strategically fascinating. She doesn't just add depth to the point guard competition, she fundamentally changes the entire dynamic of how Coach Auriemma can approach his lineup. Now, let's talk about the most intriguing possibility of all, Sarah Strong and the concept of positionless basketball. Strong is primarily listed as a forward, but her performance last season revealed something that has coaches and analysts buzzing with excitement. Her versatility, though, isn't just about being able to play multiple positions, it's about reimagining what those positions can look like. Imagine this scenario. Instead of trying to replace Paige Bueckers with a traditional point guard, what if UConn embraces a more fluid offensive approach? What if Strong's ability to handle the ball, read defenses, and make plays for others allows the Huskies to run their offense through a forward who can step out to the perimeter, post up smaller defenders, and create mismatches that traditional point guards simply can't generate? This isn't just theoretical basketball philosophy. This is about adaptation and evolution. The best programs don't just replace departed stars with similar players. They find ways to maximize the unique talents of the players they have. Strong's versatility could allow UConn to become more unpredictable offensively, more difficult to game plan against, and potentially more effective than they were even with Bueckers running the show. Coach Auriemma has never been afraid to innovate, and the idea of a point guard by committee approach could be exactly the kind of strategic adjustment that keeps UConn ahead of the competition. Instead of asking one player to shoulder all the responsibilities that Bueckers handled, why not distribute those responsibilities among multiple players who can each contribute their unique strengths? This approach could actually make UConn more dangerous, not less. When you can't predict who's going to initiate the offense on any given possession, how do you prepare defensively? Your point guard might be 6 feet tall one possession and 6'4" the next. How do you match up? These are the kinds of problems that opposing coaches love to complain about, and UConn fans love to see. So here we are, at the heart of what might be the most important question facing UConn women's basketball. How do you maintain championship-level excellence while completely reimagining your offensive identity? The numbers tell part of the story. Paige Bueckers wasn't just averaging 4.5 assists per game. She was the gravitational center around which UConn's entire offensive system revolved. Opposing defenses had to account for her scoring ability, which created opportunities for everyone else. They had to respect her court vision, which meant they couldn't help off their assignments as aggressively. She was, in every sense of the word, irreplaceable. But here's what makes this situation so fascinating from a strategy perspective. Sometimes, losing an irreplaceable player forces you to become better, in ways you never anticipated. Think about it this way. When you have a player like Bueckers, there's a natural tendency to rely on her individual brilliance to solve problems. Need a bucket in a crucial moment? Give it to Paige. Need someone to break down a tough defense? Let Paige create. Need leadership during a timeout? Look to Paige. Now, without that security blanket, UConn has to become more collaborative, more creative, and potentially more unpredictable. Every player on the roster has to be ready to step up in moments where they might have previously deferred to their superstar teammate. And the implications go far beyond just replacing Bueckers' assists and scoring. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how UConn approaches every aspect of their offensive philosophy. Do they become more motion-oriented, with constant player movement creating opportunities? Do they embrace a pace and space approach, using their athleticism to create advantage in transition? Or do they lean into their size and versatility to become a matchup nightmare that opposing coaches simply can't solve? Coach Auriemma's genius has always been his ability to adapt his system to his personnel, rather than forcing his personnel to fit a rigid system. This situation presents him with perhaps his greatest adaptation challenge yet, but also his greatest opportunity to show why he's considered one of the greatest coaches in basketball history. And the beautiful thing about this uncertainty is that it creates possibility. UConn could emerge from this transition period not just as a team that survived the loss of their best player, but as a team that discovered new ways to be great. They could become more balanced offensively, more difficult to scout, and more resilient when individual players have off nights. And isn't that exactly what championship teams are made of? Not just individual brilliance, though that certainly helps, but the kind of collective excellence that emerges when everyone understands their role and commits to something bigger than themselves. As we wrap up this deep dive into UConn's point guard situation, let's zoom out and consider what this all means for the bigger picture. Because ultimately, this isn't just about replacing one player. It's about whether UConn can maintain its position among the elite programs in women's college basketball. The reality is that championship programs are defined by their ability to reload, not rebuild. They don't skip seasons because they lost key players. They don't make excuses about transitions and growing pains. They find ways to remain competitive while developing the next generation of stars. What makes UConn's situation particularly compelling is that they have multiple pathways to success. If Kelis Fisher develops quickly and embraces the leadership role, they could have their next star point guard ready to go. If KK Arnold successfully makes the transition from role player to featured player, they prove that their development system can create stars internally. If Sarah Strong's versatility allows them to revolutionize their offensive approach, they could become even more dangerous than they were before. But here's the most exciting possibility of all. What if it's not just one of these scenarios, but a combination of all of them? What if Fisher's athleticism, Arnold's system knowledge, and Strong's versatility combine to create something entirely new and uniquely effective? The upcoming season will be absolutely crucial for establishing UConn's new identity. Every game will be a laboratory for testing different combinations, different approaches, and different strategic concepts. The non-conference schedule will provide opportunities to experiment without the pressure of league standings. The conference season will test whether their new approach can hold up against familiar opponents who know their tendencies. And then, if everything comes together, March will provide the ultimate validation. Because in college basketball, everything ultimately comes down to those few weeks when the lights are brightest and the margin for error is smallest. The beauty of sports is that we don't have to wait long for answers. The season is approaching, the players are preparing, and soon we'll know whether UConn's point guard experiment is the beginning of a new dynasty or simply a bridge to their next great era. What we can say with certainty is this: UConn women's basketball has never been defined by any single player, no matter how great. They've been defined by their commitment to excellence, their ability to adapt, and their understanding that the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back. The point guard battle at UConn isn't just about replacing Paige Bueckers, it's about proving that greatness can take many forms, and that the best programs find ways to be great regardless of who's wearing the uniform. That's what makes this story so compelling, and that's why we'll be watching every step of the way as UConn writes the next chapter in their legendary history. Thanks for joining us on Prime Field. We'll be back soon with more stories from the world of college basketball that matter most.
Prime Field.